After securing a 30-day reprieve from U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, several rounds of them could be coming soon. First, that month-long pause on 25% blanket taxes on all Canadian imports and 10% on Canadian energy is set to end March 4th. Then, Trump says he will impose tariffs on steel and aluminum and maybe also on automotives, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors. The president, meanwhile, continues to target Canadian sovereignty, ramping up his rhetoric that this country become the 51st state. So is Team Canada making any headway with the U.S. administration, and is there any chance of avoiding the tariffs altogether? Kirsten Hillman is Canada's ambassador to the U.S., and she's with us from D.C. Hi, Ambassador. It's good to see you. Thank you very much for making the time.
Thanks, Vashi. Good to be with you.
I spoke with David McGuinty, the Minister for Public Safety, late last week, and I asked him explicitly, have you received any explicit assurances that what we're doing, for example, at the border is enough to escape the application of those tariffs set to come into effect on March 4th. He said there has been no explicit assurance offered. I'd put the same question to you. Have you received any explicit assurances?
No, we haven't received any explicit assurances. Well, what we're doing several times a week now, really, including with Mr. McGuinty and others, is continuing to talk to the U.S. administration, in particular those who are specifically responsible for the border, about not only the measures that Canada is taking, but the work that we're doing together through our fentanyl task force and other projects and joint training and joint work that we're doing in the area of fighting drug crime in particular, and also giving them data on the results that are flowing from these increased measures that we have taken, including a dramatic reduction in north-south flow of illegal migrants and some very important progress on fighting fentanyl, organized crime, and fentanyl crime.
And what is the exchange like? Like, when you're providing that data, is there anything back from the U.S. administration saying, okay, this is, a good sign, this will be a factor in our decision-making? Because again, last weekend I spoke to Andrew Furey, the Premier from Newfoundland and Labrador, who said there was no constructive engagement, was his impression, on their side, on the other side, the Washington side.
Yeah, no, I don't think I would characterize it this way. I think that what happens is we provide the information. We have received positive recognition of not only the efforts that we've made, but the results that are flowing from those efforts. But all of the people that are responsible for taking this information in and then briefing the president on it are not going to speak for the president. So they will say, this is good information, thank you very much. Sometimes they'll ask follow-up questions. We'll give them follow-up data. We always ask, is there more we can be doing? Oftentimes there's no, this is good, thank you very much. Let's move on and talk about, what other joint projects we can do together. We've had a fair bit of that. We have our fentanyl czar coming down next week. He's going to continue those discussions. So we give the information. There has been recognition of progress made. There's no question about it. But none of these individuals are going to speak for the president. They will present the information to the president, and ultimately he will make the decision.
The president, though, hasn't just talked about the border, right? Certainly he raised it in some instances, and there were specific concerns that he raised, and we've talked about those before. But in the interim, he has added a whole list of things, saying he doesn't need our lumber, he doesn't need our oil, that there are major discrepancies around dairy. We're now reading that he might be targeting countries with the DST. There are clearly big trade concerns associated with this. So does our action at the border ultimately, do you think, meaningfully change anything?
Well, I think that the president uses tariffs as a tool for a variety of different policy goals. So he is using tariffs as a tool to achieve sort of a non-economic outcome that's important to him, which has to do with border security and fentanyl. That is one thing. But officials here make a very clear distinction between that and the way in which he is seeking to use tariffs potentially for his broader economic agenda. And that broader study and economic agenda is laid out in a lot of detail in a memorandum that was issued on Inauguration Day. The U.S. is undertaking a comprehensive assessment of all of their trade relations, and in particular with an eye on what I think the president sees as areas where there may be lack of what he calls fairness or reciprocity. So that is a whole nother area of study that is being done in the economic space. And in that regard, that's where you see the tariff comments around steel and aluminum, or around the DST, or around perhaps agriculture. And those comments relate to Canada, but they relate to the entire world, right? That's another area. I'm not saying that the outcome isn't the same. The tool is still tariffs, but what they are seeking to achieve through those tariffs is more in the economic space.
Yeah, and I guess it's just because we're inundated with that information, and often, yes, he's referring to other countries as well, but he invokes Canada quite frequently as a specific example. And I think most Canadians are sitting there wondering, well, even if we were to win another reprieve, are we ever really going to permanently escape the threat of these tariffs? Are they inevitable?
I can't answer that question. I can tell you that tariffs are clearly a tool that is very attractive to the president. It's a tool that he is seeking to use for a variety of purposes. On the economic side, he's seeking to use it for achieving, trade rebalancing with the world. He's seeking to use it to attract investment into the United States, and also potentially to raise revenue for some of his other objectives. So I think that we need to understand that this is probably a tool that will remain interesting to him for his entire tenure, as it was last time. And I guess what I would say here is there are two fronts that I see right now on the economic side of the tariff conversation. The first is what we're doing here in the United States with the people that are responsible for advising the president on this. And that is to try and rebalance the risk and benefit calculation of imposing those tariffs on Canada by making sure that all of the necessary people recognize the degree to which trade with Canada and open and free trade with Canada is a job creator in the United States, does lead to prosperity, does lead to energy security, does lead to resilience in their supply chains when they can't necessarily rely on other suppliers like Russia or China for things like critical minerals and fertilizers and energy products. So we are trying to make sure that the people around the president who are advising the president understand the specific nature of our relationship with the U.S. and the fact that imposing some of these particularly punitive tariffs will go against the actual policy goals that he has of creating stable, strong, resilient economy in the U.S. So that is a line of activity.
I just remember speaking to you, just really quickly, I remember speaking to you right after President Trump was elected, and your comment was that you thought he understood that all so much better than he did the first time around, and yet here we are again.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know exactly what is motivating him, but I do think that having as many people around him who are also reminding him of this is important in the long run. And I do think that he is someone who feels that he gets advantage from keeping his partners off balance a little bit, and I certainly think we're seeing that.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Ambassador, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.